What happens when one of Hollywood's most intense actors comes face to face with a morning show host who thinks he can push him around? You're about to witness an exchange that takes a sharp turn in front of the cameras, and the tension only gets worse from there. Make sure you subscribe and leave a comment telling me what you think about Tom Hardy's response, because this interview gets intense very quickly. There's Tom Hardy sitting across from George Stephanopoulos on Time's Good Morning America, and right away, something feels off. Hardy is there to promote his latest film, but Stephanopoulos appears to have something else in mind. Hardy is dressed in his usual understated style, wearing a simple black jacket, but his expression suggests he isn't interested in playing along. Tom, thanks for joining us this morning. Stephanopoulos begins, wearing that familiar television smile. Your new film is getting incredible reviews, but I want to talk about something else first. Hardy shifts slightly in his chair. Sure, George. What's on your mind? Well, there's been some controversy surrounding your comments about method acting and mental health. Some critics are saying you've been irresponsible in the way you approach your craft. The camera catches Hardy's expression change almost instantly. His eyes narrow as he processes the accusation. This clearly isn't the direction he expected the interview to take. Irresponsible? Hardy's voice remains calm, but there's an unmistakable edge underneath it. That's an interesting word choice, George. Care to elaborate? Stephanopoulos leans forward, seemingly confident that he has control of the conversation. Several mental health advocates have criticized recent interviews where you discuss going deeply into dark psychological spaces for your roles. They're saying you're glamorizing dangerous behavior. Do you agree with them? Hardy's expression hardens. His Birmingham accent becomes slightly more pronounced as his patience begins to wear thin. I'm asking the questions here, Tom. What do you say to parents who might be concerned about young actors following your example? A long silence follows. Hardy stares directly at Stephanopoulos. The studio suddenly feels completely still. Then he answers. Parents should be concerned about morning show hosts who do zero research before ambushing their guests with loaded questions based on secondhand gossip. Stephanopoulos' smile briefly disappears. Tom, I don't think that's fair. We're just trying to have an honest conversation. Honest? Hardy gives a short laugh, but there's no humor in it. George, mate, if you wanted an honest conversation, you would have mentioned this line of questioning to my publicist. You would have done your homework instead of reading talking points off a teleprompter. But that's not what this is it? I think our viewers deserve to hear your response to these legitimate concerns. Your viewers deserve better than tabloid garbage masquerading as journalism. Hardy's voice remains controlled, but the tension in the studio is becoming impossible to ignore. Tell me, George, when was the last time you actually researched method acting? When did you speak to mental health professionals about the benefits of exploring difficult emotions within a controlled professional environment? Stephanopoulos looks rattled, but he refuses to back down. Tom, I think you're being defensive here. Defensive? Hardy repeats the words slowly. Now, there's genuine disbelief in his voice. George, I came here at 5 in the morning to talk about a film I'm passionate about. Instead, you're trying to create a gotcha moment based on quotes you've taken completely out of context. That's not defensive. That's called having standards. Well, the quotes speak for themselves. Do they? Hardy pauses. Because I'd love to hear which specific quotes you're referring to. Can you cite them for me word for word? The silence that follows is uncomfortable. Stephanopoulos glances down at his notes before looking back at Hardy. Well, there have been several interviews where you've discussed your intense preparation methods. Several interviews, Hardy repeats slowly. But you can't quote a single one specifically, can you? You can't tell me which publication, which journalist, or the exact words I use that you find so problematic. Tom, I think we're getting off track here. No, George, I think we're getting right on track. Hardy leans forward slightly. You've accused me of being irresponsible and potentially influencing young actors in dangerous ways, but you can't even tell me what I supposedly said. That's not journalism, mate. That's character assassination based on hearsay. The camera cuts to Stephanopoulos. His professional composure is beginning to crack. I have the information right here in my notes. Then read it. Hardy doesn't blink. Read me the exact quote that has you so concerned about my influence on young actors. Stephanopoulos fumbles through his papers. The tension is now obvious. Finally, he responds. The specific quote isn't as important as the overall pattern of statements. The The specific quote isn't important? For the first time, Hardy's voice rises. George, you just spent 5 minutes questioning my professional integrity based on something you claim I said, and now you're telling me the actual words don't matter. That's not what I'm saying. Then what are you saying? Hardy's stare remains fixed on him. Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you brought me onto this show under false pretenses, so you could ambush me with accusations you can't even properly articulate. The tension in the studio becomes palpable. Crew members exchange uneasy glances in the background. Even the camera operators seem uncertain about whether to keep rolling. Stephanopoulos clears his throat and attempts to steer the interview back towards safer territory. Tom, let's talk about your new film. The character you play deals with some heavy themes. No, George, we're not done here. Hardy cuts him off. You just spent several minutes attacking my professional methods based on research you clearly haven't done. You owe your viewers an explanation. I think we should move on. I think you should answer the question. Hardy doesn't let up. You brought up these mental health advocates who are supposedly concerned about my influence. Name one. Give me a single name of someone who has specifically criticized my approach. Stephanopoulos shifts uncomfortably in his chair. Tom, there have been several articles. Several articles. Hardy pauses. But no names. No specific quotes. No actual criticism you can point to. He leans forward slightly. So tell me, George, what exactly are you accusing me of? George, do you realize you're doing exactly what you're accusing me of? Hardy's voice remains controlled, but his words land heavily. You're potentially damaging someone's reputation based on vague, unsubstantiated claims. That's not the same thing at all, is it? You've just told millions of viewers that mental health advocates think I'm irresponsible. You've suggested that parents should be worried about my influence on young actors, but you can't provide a single piece of evidence to support any of it. The camera captures Stephanopoulos, looking increasingly uncomfortable. We have producers who research these topics. Your producers, Hardy repeats, with a tone that sounds almost disappointed. Now, George, let me ask you something. How long have you been in journalism? That's not relevant. I think it's very relevant, because what you're doing right now isn't journalism. Hardy pauses. It's gossip. It's the kind of lazy, irresponsible reporting that gives actual journalists a bad name. Stephanopoulos' face begins to redden. Tom, I don't appreciate your tone, and I don't appreciate being ambushed on live television. By someone who couldn't be bothered to do basic fact-checking? Hardy doesn't back down. But here we are. We invited you here as a guest. You invited me here under the pretense of discussing my work, then immediately launched into an attack based on information you can't even verify. That's not hosting, George. Hardy looks directly at him. That's entrapment. The studio falls completely silent. The audience watches the confrontation unfold in real time, while crew members exchange uneasy glances, seemingly unsure whether someone should cut to a commercial break. Tom, I think you're overreacting. Overreacting? Hardy's voice becomes quieter. Somehow, that makes the moment even more intense. George, you've just accused me of potentially harming young actors. You've suggested I'm irresponsible in my approach to mental health. You've implied that I'm a bad influence. He pauses. And you did all of this without a single shred of evidence. How exactly would you like me to react? Stephanopoulos tries to defend the line of questioning. These are legitimate questions about celebrity responsibility. Based on what? Hardy immediately fires back. Show me the study. Show me the expert opinion. Show me anything other than your producer's interpretation of what someone might have said about something I might have done. Stephanopoulos looks down at his notes again. The concerns have been raised in various media outlets. Various media outlets. Hardy repeats the phrase slowly. George, do you hear yourself? You sound like a politician dodging a corruption scandal. Various sources say people are concerned. It's been reported. These are weasel words, mate. This is how people talk when they're making claims they can't substantiate. I'm not making anything up. Then prove it right now on air. Hardy leans forward. Show me one specific example of what you're talking about. The silence stretches. Stephanopoulos shuffles through his papers, glances toward the cameras, then looks back at Hardy. Tom, I think we're spending too much time on this. No, we're spending exactly the right amount of time on this. Hardy's response is immediate. You made serious accusations against my professional character, and now you're trying to move on when I ask you to back them up. That's not how this works. Nobody's running away from anything. Then stop deflecting and answer the question. Hardy's expression remains firm. One name, one specific quote, one piece of actual evidence for any of the claims you've made. Stephanopoulos is visibly uncomfortable. Tom, our research team compiled information from multiple sources. Your research team. Hardy repeats the phrase slowly. Compiled information. He shakes his head. George, that's not an answer. That's corporate speak. You're hiding behind your research team the same way you're hiding behind these anonymous critics and vague concerns. I'm not hiding behind anything. Then take responsibility. Hardy's tone becomes sharper. Either admit you don't have specific information to back up your accusations, or provide it. Stop trying to have it both ways. Stephanopoulos glances off camera, seemingly looking toward his producers for help. Tom, I think our viewers would prefer to hear about your new film. Our viewers deserve better than this. Hardy doesn't hesitate. They deserve hosts who do actual research instead of ambushing guests with tabloid rumors. They deserve journalists who can back up their questions with facts, instead of hiding behind vague language and anonymous sources. You're being very aggressive here. I'm being precise. Hardy pauses. There's a difference. You came at me with serious accusations, and now you're upset because I'm asking you to back them up with actual evidence. That's not aggression, George. That's accountability. The camera cuts to the studio audience. They look captivated, but visibly uncomfortable, as if they're watching a moment that was never supposed to happen on live television. Stephanopoulos tries one more time to regain control. Tom, let's try to have a productive conversation here. We could have had a productive conversation if you'd started with honest questions about my actual work instead of manufactured controversy designed to create a viral moment. Hardy sits back slightly. But you chose this approach, so let's see it through. Stephanopoulos pauses, realizing the interview has completely slipped out of his control. Then, in what appears to be one final attempt to salvage the conversation, he takes a breath and prepares his next question. Tom, I understand you're passionate about your work, but surely you can acknowledge that celebrities have a responsibility when they speak publicly about sensitive topics. Hardy stares at Stephanopoulos for several seconds. Then he responds, his voice calm but cutting through the studio. Absolutely, George. Celebrities do have a responsibility. He pauses. Just like journalists have a responsibility to their audience. Just like morning show hosts have a responsibility to properly prepare for their interviews. And just like network, television has a responsibility to maintain basic standards of integrity. I think we maintain very high standards here. Do you? Hardy's response is immediate. Because right now, your audience is watching you make accusations you can't support, ask questions based on research you haven't done, and dodge accountability whenever you're challenged. He leans forward. Is that the high standard you're talking about? The camera catches Stephanopoulos' expression. His composure is visibly slipping. Tom, you're being incredibly difficult. Difficult? Hardy repeats the word, sounding genuinely incredulous. George, you ambushed me with serious accusations on live television, and now you think I'm being difficult because I'm asking you to support them with facts? He pauses. What exactly did you expect would happen here? I expected a professional conversation. Then you should have conducted yourself professionally. Hardy doesn't hesitate. You should have done your homework. You should have prepared actual questions instead of relying on tabloid-style gotcha tactics. Stephanopoulos glances around the studio, seemingly hoping someone will intervene or cut to a commercial. Tom, I think we need to wrap this up. Oh, now you want to wrap it up? Hardy's eyebrows lift. After spending 10 minutes attacking my professional integrity based on claims you still haven't supported? He continues before Stephanopoulos can respond. After implying to millions of viewers that I'm a dangerous influence on young actors, now you suddenly want to move on? We have limited time. We had limited time when you decided to waste it on manufactured controversy instead of discussing my actual work. Hardy shakes his head. You made that choice, George. You decided this was how you wanted to spend our time together. The studio falls completely silent. Only the quiet hum of the cameras can be heard. Crew members stand frozen in the background, uncertain about what to do next. The interview has completely gone off the rails. Tom, I'm going to ask you one more time to please tone it down. Tone it down? Hardy's voice drops again. Somehow, the quieter he becomes, the more intense the moment feels. George, you just told me to tone it down on your show after you attacked my professional reputation. He pauses. Do you understand how insulting that is? I'm just trying to have a civil conversation. Civil? Hardy lets out a bitter laugh. There's nothing civil about ambushing a guest with unsubstantiated accusations. He continues, each sentence sharper than the last. There's nothing civil about making claims you can't back up. And there's certainly nothing civil about trying to damage someone's reputation for ratings. Stephanopoulos is visibly sweating now. The polished television persona he started the interview with has almost completely disappeared. Tom, that's not what this is about. Then what is it about? Hardy stares directly at him. Explain it to me. He gestures toward the cameras. Explain it to your viewers. Why did you bring me here under false pretenses? Why did you think it was acceptable to make serious accusations without doing basic fact-checking? The studio remains silent. Hardy waits for an answer, and for the first time, Stephanopoulos appears to have nowhere left to hide. Explain why you think journalism means repeating gossip and calling it news. We're trying to ask important questions about celebrity influence. No, you're trying to create controversy where none exists. Hardy doesn't back down. You're manufacturing drama for television ratings. And when you're called out, you hide behind vague phrases like celebrity responsibility and important questions. The camera cuts to Stephanopoulos. He looks completely defeated, but Hardy still isn't finished. George, let me ask you something. He pauses. Do you have children? That's not relevant. I think it is. Hardy leans forward. Do you have children who might someday see this interview? Children who could learn something from watching how you conduct yourself professionally? Tom, please. Because if you do, what lesson do you think they're learning right now? Hardy's expression hardens. That it's acceptable to make accusations without evidence? That you can ambush someone with unverified claims and call it journalism? That when you're challenged over your own mistakes, you can simply tell the other person to calm down and move on? Stephanopoulos looks off camera again, seemingly signaling to his producers that the interview needs to end. Tom, I think we should take a break. A break? Hardy shifts forward in his chair. George, you don't get to take a break from accountability. His voice remains controlled. You don't get to make serious accusations about someone's character and then walk away the moment you're asked to justify them. Security? Stephanopoulos calls out. The atmosphere instantly changes. Security? Hardy looks genuinely stunned. You're calling security because I'm asking you to support your own questions with facts? He shakes his head. This is unbelievable. Security personnel begin moving toward the set. Hardy watches them approach, clearly incredulous. This is what modern journalism has become, folks. For the first time, Hardy turns directly toward the camera. When a journalist gets called out for poor research and unsupported accusations, they call security instead of admitting they got it wrong. Tom, you need to calm down, one of the security guards says as he approaches. Calm down? Hardy looks at the guard, then back towards Stephanopoulos. I'm sitting here speaking in complete sentences and asking for basic journalistic standards. He gestures toward the host. What exactly am I supposed to be calming down from? Stephanopoulos appears to have completely lost control of the situation. Remove him from the set. On what grounds? Hardy remains remarkably calm. For asking you to provide evidence for your accusations? For expecting you to do your job professionally? The security personnel move closer. Hardy slowly rises from his chair. This is remarkable. He looks around the studio. Absolutely remarkable. I came here to talk about my work, and I'm being removed from the set for expecting basic journalistic integrity. Hardy turns toward the camera one final time. Folks, this is what happens when you ask for accountability in modern media. Remember this moment. And with that, Tom Hardy walks away from the set under his own power, leaving Stephanopoulos sitting behind the desk, visibly stunned. The studio audience remains silent. For several seconds, the camera stays focused on Stephanopoulos as he attempts to regain his composure. He shuffles through his papers with visibly unsteady hands before the broadcast finally cuts away. What did you think of that brutal exchange? Hardy didn't simply defend himself. He turned the entire interview around and forced the host to confront the questions being asked about journalistic responsibility. Subscribe for more breakdowns of intense celebrity interviews and moments when guests refuse to simply play along. And tell me in the comments, which moment of Hardy's takedown hit the hardest?